Hello my friends and welcome to the first installment of MMOs Exposed, a series focused on shedding light on scenes you won't exactly see in the trailers.
Run for the hills, everyone! The mounts are finally revolting! Oh my god, this is cursed!
Targeting and seeking out the truth of historic preconceptions and new player concerns, diving into and breaking open titles from the monolithic to the unsung heroes, and even showcasing them coming back from the dead. In this inaugural adventure, we will be taking to the stars to begin a journey exploring the universe of an MMO that over the years has grown from a space ninja third-person looter-shooter into an experience unrecognizable from its early years, and in the past couple of years especially, has been evolving rapidly into a truly epic experience, pushing its limits to the extreme. Has this free-to-play sci-fi adventure fallen for the same pitfalls of so many free-to-play games? Has its story reached out from its lackluster beginnings? My name's MitchManix, and I present to you Warframe. To begin, we must prepare the hit list of historic preconceptions and new player concerns for us to debunk or confirm on our journey. We will be covering a whole host of elements, but these are the targets that we must hit. The new player experience. Endgame is a meme. PvP is dead. The monetization including pay to win. And Warframe's weak story. Of course, while avoiding spoilers. With our targets confirmed, let's get started with the new player experience in this mysterious world.
What? You bastard! Ruining my epic shot.
Warframe opens with an incredibly well-produced opening cutscene, setting up the game's prologue in a grand and cinematic way, showing an unknown woman tracking down the now forgotten and abandoned Warframes, visiting a site where they now reside, while being stalked by an intimidating-looking military squad, the Grineer, a race of clones carving a path through the system. Choosing our starting Warframe, we are given 3 options, with their initial stats and unique combat abilities explained, with Mag standing out, as I simply could not resist a good clap of death.
If you're happy and you know a clap of death.
Now in the game proper, we get a better look at this Grineer military squad, and its strange, cursed, mechanical cauliflower-looking leader, Captain Vor, as they attempt to revive and capture the idle Warframe, a plan that backfires instantly, with our Warframe being supercharged into action to take down the would-be kidnappers.
Quick, use your power. Defend yourself.
Feel my wrath!
Use your power.
Oh yeah, powers. And my defense, it's tiny. Look at it.
Turning our foes into a Resident Evil boss, we make our way into the visually striking night to first track down some initial weapons, while being guided concerningly by a guide who can see f*** all. First getting a choice between a bow stick and a Skarner blade. An easy choice, as old Craig David once said.
When the crowd say ball, selector.
Finding out that the Grineer also seemingly have an Achilles heel. We sneak past the roaming enemies ahead. The tutorial plays out, introducing us to a number of weapons, as well as of course the game's hugely dynamic and satisfying feeling movement system, sliding and gliding around like a John Woo movie about a spandex fetish. Progressing further, we get a chance to bite back at the peekaboo bot Captain Vor, who after a short face-off retreats to his ship, leaving us to retrieve our own, and head up to the stars to begin the true journey. A journey beginning with a handy login bonus.
Because you're a friend, I'm going to offer you something special. Just remember, 1 per customer. 1 per customer. 1 per customer. 1 per customer. 1.
With us now in our ship, we get a look at the game's base of operations for the player, as well as an initial peek at Warframe's core experience, setting out on missions across a number of planets, with up to 4 players getting stuck into a variety of game modes. Exploring our cool-looking but unfortunately recently looted base of operations that hopefully won't be out of operations for long, as both our strangely dressed female guide, as well as the bonkers-sounding onboard robot AI.
The operator may now contact black market scumbags. Contact arms dealers.
I've located a number of modules that once obtained will get our ship back in action, as well as a plan to figure out what strange device the Grineer have attached to us when attempting to capture the Warframes. Setting out on our quest to revive the ship, taking on the self-contained missions on Earth, Captain Vor reaches out once again to explain that the tag he placed on us at the start of the game is actually a device that will burrow into the Warframes and eventually take over control, completing his task of obtaining a Warframe for himself. Why he decided to call us up and tell us this instead of just waiting for it to happen is anyone's guess, however. An act that's almost as confusing as the chap's military, spouting Shakespeare and shaking their everything all over the floor after taking a blow to the head.
Build this place.
Are you done? Nope.
The missions to get back the ship's systems and rid ourselves of Vor's device act as an extended tutorial, both walking through a number of the game's mission types, such as Spy, which, as you can imagine, is all about the sneaky, and Sabotage, as in what my ex-wife did to my entire life. After completing each mission and reconstructing each ship's system, the game introduces the player to a number of key mechanics, such as crafting as well as the game's mods, with both being essential to progression. The new player experience in Warframe is one that I frequently hear is lacking when it comes to setting up players with the fundamentals of the game, and unfortunately, it seems that even today, that still remains at least somewhat the case. For example, after unlocking the armory and with it a chance to upgrade frames and weapons, the game's quirky ship AI pipes up, as if he's about to walk us through the intricacies of modding a weapon, asking us to first equip a mod to continue, and then...
Install the mod before we can continue.
Does absolutely bugger all.
In the developer's defense, there is a detailed breakdown for modding available when hitting the tutorial button at the bottom of this menu. But what's confusing is that the detailed run-through that the game presents after hitting this button is not automatically presented to the player their first time around, and could simply be skipped by already established players. In fact, I'll go as far to say that there are probably players with hundreds of hours that don't even know this is here. This being a small change that I feel could go a long way, and it's not the only baffling design choice in today's new player experience, as we'll see as we continue our journey.
Operator, your inbox exists in a non-zero state. Would you care to check your mail?
MitchManix, so here you are. I want you to know that if you are planning on busting out any of your god-awful music for this adventure to think again, I am the music in this universe, and I won't hesitate to sit you down if you don't behave. Consider yourself warned, silly British man.
Ha! We'll see about that frickin' Super Bowl halftime parade, Warframe. Mark my words, by the end of this video, we'll see who's sitting who down.
Working through the remainder of the quests to hunt down the remaining ship parts, disabling the Grineer device, as well as ultimately the satanic Sunflower himself, with a face-off with Captain Vor. The new player experience now opens up, with players being able to continue on with the initial quests, or get stuck in progressing through the star chart missions. Another moment where a small addition would go a long way to explain things, such as where the missions are displayed on the HUD, and the process of beating missions and junctions to unlock more planets. This information is there if you know where to look for it, and the developers have done 95% of the work walking players to it, but not everyone sitting down on the navigation will click around to find out where the next quests are, over just starting up another mission. And a quick tooltip pointing out the HUD features, again could go a long way to avoid players feeling out of the loop. Given how much some other games bombard the player with a seemingly endless stream of nonsense, I think players would probably forgive developers Ditch to Extremes for shoving such core information into their face, at least for the first time around. Getting stuck into the star chart missions, and realizing that the Grineer have seemingly picked up a word or two of English after all. We rejoin the game's questing, being tasked with visiting Konzu on Cetus, with a look into one of the game's player hubs, once again highlighting Warframe's exceptional environmental design. Wandering through this settlement, meeting its vendors in the market, and finally getting to see groups of other players, we track down Konzu, that after meeting provides us with our first bounty to complete out in the plains. The plains being one of Warframe's open-world zones, that are a stark contrast from the corridors and small contained spaces of the Star Chart missions.
What the hell is that? Kind of Gears of War!
And as we'll see a little later, houses all manner of far more MMO-feeling activities. Finishing up the bounty and heading back to the ship, we're informed that we have qualified for our first Mastery rank test, Warframe, unlike most conventional MMOs, uses a leveling system that is tied to the player's experience, not only leveling each of the Warframes, but also each weapon type, companions, and a number of additional modes of destruction, encouraging stepping away from just picking out a loadout and sticking with it, and a great way to slowly introduce the player to alternative combat options and playstyles. A Mastery rank test is unlocked once a player has obtained enough experience overall, and if passed will grant them the next Mastery rank, along with all weapons and quests that unlock with that level. And sounding a little bit like a broken record here, all of that being something that would work well as a quick breakdown when taking on the first test. Now rank 2, and after ticking off the prerequisites and meeting another of Warframe's bonkers antagonists in the form of Biff from Back to the Future's nightmare fuel mechanical ancestor, we move to take on the challenge of Earth's Junction, a quick bout against an NPC Warframe who gets absolutely annihilated, yet still seems to approve of the entire situation. Unlocking Venus and its nodes to get stuck into more of Warframe's self-contained missions, to level up and of course collect more resources. Venus, like our previous location Earth, also has available another player hub in the form of Fortuna, a neon-soaked industrial settlement, once again housing groups of players as well as a range of NPCs that have their own bounties, reputation to gather and level up, in addition to vendors selling all sorts of weapons and items. Taking on the planet's opening bounties and getting into another striking open-world zone in Orb Vallis, we are eventually provided with one of Warframe's slightly odd additions, getting to ride on the K-Drive, whizzing around Tony Hawk's Pro Skater style, just adding to the epic, if not slightly confusing, factor, and after a while receiving a much-due reality check for trying to look cool.
Ah, yeah. Smooth.
You made it. Time to give Death
Not
a
so
taste
smooth.
of repossession.
Finishing up and venturing a little further, we begin our first assassination mission, which in practice contains the game's boss fights, with the one on Venus being against the mighty Jackal.
I expected it to be bigger.
A true test of the player up until this point, as up until Venus things have been pretty smooth sailing, as well as revealing one of the first ways of obtaining new Warframes for new players, with this Jackal dropping the parts for the Warframe Rhino on defeat, a feature of all the game's star chart boss encounters, giving players an easy way to begin bulking out their Warframe roster, with our foot very much in the door with the new player experience. Before updating the hit list, there is another mode that until very recently was an option to play in place of the new player experience that we just journeyed through, and is now instead an option after finishing up the quests with old cauliflower head flaily pants. This being the far more recent addition to the game, taking place in the mysterious and striking land of Deviri. After starting the quest, the player will be able to create their personalized drifter character, an experience that, safe to say, caught me a little bit off guard.
Oh. Why would you ever want that expression?
The gritty land of Warframe.
Yeah. It looks like he's staring at his lover doing a painting or some shit.
Deviri, as cool as its experiences can be later down the line, as we'll see, will most likely only further confuse and overwhelm new players, however, as has much more of a story-driven, quest-heavy narrative for its new player experience. And although it's great to see some of the game's more core characters early on,
Oh, yes. And this is, well, it was you that named her. Remember?
Ah, yes, Abomination. How could I forget?
I would highly advise leaving this new offering to later in the player's journey, as there is already more than enough to get to grips with, and I can see why developers Digital Extremes put at least a few missions in front of it before being accessible by new players. So after a thorough dive into it, how does the new player experience stack up 11 years after release? Well, in short, it's still very easy for new players to get lost after finishing up taking down the brilliantly constructed opening and following Captain Vor quest. Small touches such as a few automatically activated info screens for first-time players, in addition to the buttons on the HUD that could be missed, and a few guided tooltips could go a long way to smooth out the player's understanding. And I feel like there is still some way to go before the new player experience becomes something I feel will allow for most players to jump in and feel like they're getting to grips with things in the opening hours. So, that's number 1 on the hit list, most certainly confirmed. Next up is the Endgame, but first a quick overview of what exactly a Warframe is. There are a whole range of characters to unlock that come with their own set of combat abilities, ranging from badass-looking waves of destruction to locking down a zone with a web of death, to hilarious-looking options such as firing enemies out of your stomach like some sort of cursed bowling, or doing a little jig to turn everyone into kebabs. Frames are fully customizable as well as moddable with the game's augments to allow for a variety of builds and combat options overall. Warframe being one of those games that so many tag with the typical "it gets good after 100 hours" statement. But what is it that those players uncover after those hundreds of hours that makes it all worth it? Well, let's ballywell find out as we switch over from the new player account to my main account with over 800 hours played and take a nice juicy bite out of Warframe's Endgame, all the way up to the latest update. After so many hours, as we touched in the new player experience, this game has so many moving parts that running through every single element of the game would feel like an alien creature chewing off your head.
Ugh, what even is that?
So targeting the ones with the most impact and of course fun factor is required. First off is the Kuva Lich and Sister system. This mode you will encounter a true nemesis that possesses some of the most powerful weapons in the game. These foes work in a vaguely similar way to the nemesis system in Shadow of War, while also now and again acting as a form of mental ex-girlfriend simulator, named tough enemies that will take over a planet and steal some of your rewards when running missions there, and frequently taunt you into seeking them out.
I remember every moment we've shared, every touch, every lash, every wound.
To take on these foes, players will need to equip their frame's special arm blade, the Parazon, with a series of glyphs that when placed in the right order will smash down their psycho ex-girlfriend Lich, but guessing the wrong order would lead them to leveling up and growing in power, making the final battle all the more of a bloodbath. The final battle with these enemies will be carried out in a space station, integrating the game's player-owned customizable railjack ships for a truly epic showdown. And once bested, the player will get the choice of taking their frequently highly powerful firearms, or capturing them to use as summonable companions. A good laugh the first few times around, but can become a bit of a grind considering how long each take to topple. Another notable content type comes in the forms of the game's Eidolon hunts. Returning back to our look at some of the game's open worlds, Eidolon hunts task the player with taking down either a single or a trio of these hulking behemoths during the night while out in the plains of Cetus. These hunts are not for the unprepared, however, as especially in its triple hunts, will take preparation and coordination with your team to take on, gathering up and charging the lures spread around the plains, and using both the Warframes and Drifter forms to carefully disable and capture these towering foes, bringing with it significant challenge as well as significant reward, dropping some of the most sought-after upgrades in the game. Some late-game players specialize to work to create the most optimal loadouts and squads to take on these hunts to sell off the spoils to generate stacks of in-game currency. And even 800 hours in, I can say still offer up some of the most high-octane experiences, feeling true satisfaction returning from a successful night hunting.
Excuse me? Do you mind? Oh, for God's sake, I buy you this silly bed and you still insist on sleeping there.
Moving on to one of the keystones of Warframe's endgame experience, in a more traditional fashion, is of course the game's Steel Path mode. After players complete all the missions in the star chart, an additional difficulty mode will be unlocked that bumps up all the enemy levels and buffs them to meet the power of more advanced players. Each node in the star chart can be reattempted in the Steel Path mode, with increased drop rates. And now while playing a mission features visits from Acolytes, powerful bounty hunter type enemies that will spawn in and attempt to destroy the player, and once again upon defeat, dropping some worthwhile rewards. Certainly a mode that will take a lot of planning and metal to finish the star chart once more. Now onto an extremely recent update. Developers Digital Extremes have set out to add more options to the true endgame content in the form of their new Netracells missions, taking place in the visually stunning Sanctum Anatomica, a place containing yet more insanely designed characters, with by far my favorite being a posh-sounding fish, sporting a chain that even gives Buster Rhymes a run for his money. These Netracell missions come with a daunting warning of their difficulty, including enemies up to level 240, tasking full squads of players picking up key glyphs that debuff its holder with effects, such as sapping the player's energy supplies, or adding additional status effects to damage taken. This new mode is a step in the right direction for sure, but still won't topple players that have already spent hundreds of hours crafting the most optimal builds, and still does highlight one of Warframe's challenges when it comes to its endgame and the game's power creep.
Haha, man in the wall, my ass. No one suspects the man stuck in the floor.
Another new mode that makes some interesting tweaks to challenging its players is the Steel Path Circuit, taking place in the mysterious land of Deviri that we visited earlier, and housing some of the best weapons in the game, with its transformable Incarnon weapons. The circuit limits players' options for loadout to only a few randomly selected options, to mix and match before getting stuck into its missions, that are of course also Steel Path, with all the additional enemy levels and buffs present, giving way to pulling the player out of their comfort zone with their meta builds, and instead testing their ability to adapt and still come out on top against the game's higher level mission types. With all of this being coupled with Deviri's decree system, giving the player a number of options of buffs and modifiers to choose while playing for more of a roguelike experience, with this mode again being a nice addition to create a new challenge to overcome, with some tasty rewards. So, returning to the hit list, has Warframe now solved its endgame woes? Well, a little. With so many options to choose from, such as incredibly powerful frames such as Revenant, that with the right build is practically invincible, and Wisp, that with a touch of a button can drop healing, speed, and CC all in one, and overall has a fantastic arsenal. With such powerful options, the game is always going to be quite difficult to balance when it comes to its challenges, and they've seemingly backed themselves into a corner slightly, having so much on offer to fulfill that satisfying feeling of growing in power, and creating the perfect loadout for each mission type, that it's still a struggle to present true endgame challenges that aren't trivialized by longer-standing players. There are still highlights such as the Eidolon Hunts and Steel Path Circuit that still require team coordination and preparation. And of course, a lot of the game's endgame is centered around increasing the mastery rank, and seeking out and leveling up all the frames, weapons, and companions, etc. So some will find plenty to keep them busy in their 1000th hour regardless. So my friends, overall, the endgame in Warframe is moving in the right direction, but not quite there yet. But given its clear focus recently, I'm keen to see how this progresses in the future.
That's hitlist item number 2 confirmed, but with a little asterisk there.
Inbox exists in a non-zero state. Would you care to check your mail?
Hello again, my tea-guzzling titbag. I hope you are staying away from making any sort of song and dance while you wander around my universe. I saw your Cringefest Guild Wars 2 video. Don't forget, I hear everything. Cheerio.
Prance about while you can, dear, as by the end of this video, you're gonna see.
Oh boy, we're on to the PvP. This one is gonna be a short one. In all, Warframe's PvP is more dead than creativity in React content. I feel like the developers have long since given up trying to turn the game's PvP mode into somewhat of a main draw for the game, leaving only tiny pockets of players even queuing up for the PvP modes on offer, which if you ask me is a shame, as in the few games I got in I found I was enjoying it from time to time. This may just be me liking a bit of competition, but at the same time felt a little like there was some real lost potential here. Unbalanced, lacking players to say the least, and clearly not a focus. Most matches consist of 1 or 2 unsuspecting players who haven't realized how dead the modes are, as well as of course that one player that spends all day doing it, just to smash them all up. If you are considering diving into Warframe to migrate over from a similar title such as Destiny 2, you'll have to do so with the mind that your PvP experience will be all but left behind with it while doing so. I've heard that there's a little more of a scene over on the NA side, but not exactly by much, and with all that considered, players will still need to put in some considerable effort to make PvP work for them in this one. Hitlist number 3, most certainly confirmed. So, we have arrived at probably the most discussed and polarizing target on the hit list. Warframe's monetization, including if the game can be classed pay to win. The game uses an in-game currency named Platinum that can be used to buy weapons, warframes, as well as other bundles that unlock major pieces of kit, such as the Necromech, a customizable robot death machine, and the Railjack, a player's personal fighter ship for space missions. Platinum can also be used to speed up crafting, buy boosters to double experience gain or item drop rates, as well as of course be spent on the game's huge amount of customization colors and cosmetics.
We make sure our microtransactions focus on the ability to customize nipples. It's very important to us.
Oh yeah, I can get behind that.
It sounds like a lot, and it is. However, all of these items, including the boosters and cosmetics, can be obtained by playing the game. And for the most part, not in a, I'm going to let the players earn this, but make it as painful as possible so they give up and spend real cash anyway kind of way that you see in other free-to-play games. There are a few frames and grinds for gear in the game that are on the longer side, such as the Railjack, and especially if you're like me and seemingly farted in RNGesus's kettle in a past life. But for the most part, in-game currency will mainly be for pay for convenience over pay to win. Do you want to run bounties to rack up enough reputation to get the blueprints for this frame? Or just buy it outright? Warframe also, as mentioned before, has a marketplace to allow players to trade with each other using platinum, meaning players that sell off their unwanted duplicates or farm up some sought-after items for the market can generate stacks of platinum without spending any real cash if they so desire. Regarding pay to win, it's an interesting one, as there's not really anything to really win by paying stacks of real cash. As we've seen, PvP is not a key player, and whales would mostly be spending a lot of platinum on items that a lot of the free-to-play players would obtain while working through the game's content anyway. And it goes without saying that anyone looking to purely buy their way to the top of a non-competitive game probably doesn't enjoy the game's gameplay enough to get stuck in and seek it out themselves, leaving me wondering why they would be playing especially this game in the first place.
Congratulations, Bushreed. You finally found the bed. Well done.
There are no gacha mechanics, loot boxes, or other predatory mechanics getting in the way of anyone wanting to pay for the convenience, getting their hands on the latest Prime, for example, a task that if done in-game, would take cracking open in-game obtained relics for the parts, or simply buying the parts from players on the market. Overall, Warframe for me has one of the best free-to-play models I've seen in the free-to-play space, carefully managing to blend big purchasable items with small cosmetics, such as turning your Kavat companion into a silly wizard. I've never really felt forced to spend any real cash in the game, as after all, while that new sword is being crafted, why do I need to pay to rush it when there are so many other things to get stuck into to tide me over till its completion, as it's not really stopping me from doing anything. There are, however, a few cheeky inclusions, such as requiring the previously mentioned Railjack and Necromech as some of the bigger story questlines, and some of the grinds for new gear and frames will leave players staggering around exhausted.
Only you.
What was that?
Only you.
But overall, if you find yourself enjoying Warframe's moment-to-moment gameplay, its monetization will not work to put barriers in your way or twist your arm into paying to continue to enjoy your experience or progress, given such a wide array on offer, with this target on the hit list being sent to the void. Now a spoiler-free delve into the game's story, an element that in the past has been described as bare bones, and simply something to put a setting to all the epic bullet-dodging, satisfying combat encounters. Over the last few years, the developers have released a number of significant updates that have gone a long way to add depth to its narrative experience. Without spoiling anything, it's clear that the stories that the game tells, as with its endgame, have definitely become a focus to build upon, whether it's within the small quests that unlock the parts to build a new frame, or the much grander rollercoaster ride of the New War questline. Personally, I've fallen in love a little bit with the narrative experiences Digital Extremes just seem to be getting better and better at crafting, now featuring some far more fleshed out characters.
Did this dude just Honda headbutt me?
From the actually quite chilling reveal of the origins of the Warframe Harrow,
You cannot kill this, Tenno. Run! You can only run!
or the tragic and mysterious plotline around a certain ship drifting through the void. For me, the game's story has become one of its most improved upon elements. Narratives that land especially hard when delivered in the incredibly cinematic and high production style the developers have achieved. When new updates are announced, yes, of course, this gets players yearning for yet more Warframes and builds to put together. However, more and more I find myself eagerly looking forward to the next plot development, to see what will play out in this strange but oddly alluring universe, while at the same time keeping with it some of its tongue-in-cheek humor and silliness to balance things out.
What's with the music?
Isn't it great? I can lead you through some breathing exercises.
Just turn it off.
The bulk of the game's story is delivered in quite short bursts, but are then reinforced by the game's landscapes and environmental storytelling. And I for one quite like this model, as a lot of players come to Warframe to grind for the best gear and take on quick-fire game modes, while enjoying the gameplay, and moving over to a heavy focus on very lengthy narrative experiences wouldn't really fit into the mold, something that possibly Digital Extreme's upcoming title Soulframe may be able to deliver. Just as a side note, Soulframe? Did you let the intern name that? I digress. What the developers have done over the past couple of years have been well received, and goes a long way to keeping me invested to see what they have in store for the future. So has Warframe done enough to shake off the claim that it's lacking when it comes to its story? If you ask me, most certainly. And with that, this final target on the hit list is sent to the void. With the hit list completed, the question still remains. of who will enjoy modern-day Warframe, as if you are potentially looking to seek in so many hours into the game, you want to be the type of person who gets a kick out of the results we have exposed. It goes without saying that if you don't get on with its gameplay, dashing about dispatching your foes in all manner of epic-looking ways, you most certainly will not enjoy this game, as so much hangs on finding enjoyment when repeating content and building up your account. And on that note, if you are put off with the concept of grinding together the parts you need to craft your next desired weapon or upgrade, once again you will most likely quickly become bored with the game after not too long. The new player experience is still overwhelming, yet not fully equipped to really set up potential new players, and I feel the wikis and guides out there still go a long way to fill in the gaps. But for those who make it through, and really want to dive in and explore what this game has to offer, will find themselves pulling back the layers of an experience that just keeps getting deeper, more filled with character and mystique, and getting more and more fulfilling the further they go. The game also has an exceptional following, and is reflected in the developers' events with a great sense of community and excitement for what lies ahead. A community that I'm sure makes its members proud to be a part of. Far from being a game for everyone, but for those that take on the challenge, have one hell of a universe to explore. Now, with all that said and done, if you'll excuse me, I have a certain smug musical Warframe to deal with.
What? Don't you dare!